Hello everyone, this is Talking Dragons, where me and Carter are going to talk about House of the Dragon, Fire and Blood, the book that it's based off of, and, let's talk about some dragons, Carter.
We're talking about the first three chapters, which basically encompasses Aegon's rule.
If this one doesn't record, I'm just like, how in that one chapter where the Northmen, when they don't have purpose, they just walk into the middle of the frozen tundra and die. I think if this time it doesn't record again.
Yeah, you're gonna go to Ukraine and just die.
It really is just God punishing me for not doing the Corlys Valerian voice for the entire episode the last time we recorded.
Yeah, we do have some real low-hanging fruit here, because you just do all the voices.
I am the voice actor.
Just make you say stupid shit.
Right now, I have the ability to do every AI meme ever for all of the characters in the book, because I am just the voice actor.
You're just them. It's too good.
Welcome to House of the Dragon.
Today we are talking about dragons. Alright.
That's one of my favorite parts about recording the book, is just coming up with voices for the characters. There's a pirate guy that we meet, and he only has a couple lines, but I thought it was really fun to get into his voice, because he's such a crazy character, the way he's set up. I don't know, there's certain people that it's just really fun. But that's also the hard part about this book, is because George is just, as he would say, he's wants to kill every character that he writes. You never know who you're creating a voice for one line, and who's going to actually be a fleshed out character. So I don't know, it's just funny, because I'll spend 10 minutes thinking of something, and then they'll die in the next paragraph, and I was like, okay.
Yeah. That must really stink too, to put in all that effort into a voice, thinking of a character, and then just having them be like, yeah, he got castrated and thrown into a dragon pit, and then the dragons ate him.
But also he got castrated and thrown into a dragon pit, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Kind of worth having to think of another voice.
Yeah, we know our audience here.
Absolutely. Listen, these are Game of Thrones fans. They are in for the weird shit, dude.
Well, you want to go in on dragons are fake theory?
What is dragons are fake? What is dragons are fake? Please.
Oh, it's just some stupid shit I made up just now to say, in the thematic universe of Game of Thrones, dragons are fake. But everything else is real.
It's the flat earthers equivalent of the Game of Thrones universe.
You heard it here first, folks. Dragons are fake.
What if, who is the guy, the one-handed preacher in King's Landing? What if instead of talking about how Targaryen stinky, he was just dragons are fake?
Where do you think I got it from?
He's just flat earth.
I heard his word.
So Aegon's Conquest, everybody.
Yeah, so Aegon's Conquest is a really cool section of Fire and Blood.
That Aegon fella, let me tell you. Bro, shout out to the homies who sat through me calling him Aegon for 5 chapters before somebody in the comments was actually.
Yeah, shout out to that guy just absolutely dunking on you, dude.
He did dunk on me. Because, listen, he is right. It is Aegon. You watch the show, they say Aegon. I can't, talk shit. He's right. Also, hell yes to me saying anus for you.
Oh yeah,
anus.
We're getting too far ahead.
I'll cut this part out.
No, you can keep it in. I don't give a fuck. It's so funny. It'll keep them coming.
Those are my fucking spoilers. All right, we are 6 minutes in. Aegon.
We have not even mentioned Aegon once.
What are you talking about? Did you, excuse me, did you just say Aegon? It's Aegon, dumbass. So people in the comments be fucking furiously typing.
Oh, they fuming at the nose.
I'll bet you what, I would guarantee that in some part the reason that the videos initially gained traction is because I fucked up the names. Because there was a...
Damn, we connected the dots here.
I don't know. Whatever. Aegon Conquest, everybody.
Yeah, Aegon's Conquest.
Okay,
It is a thing that happened.
Aegon wakes up one day. Valeria got absolutely dunked on. Michael Jordan slammed a dunk so hard, Valeria just exploded, right?
Yellowstone super volcano. That's what we're talking about.
We're talking about the nastiest of airtime he had, regardless. So Valeria gets tactical nuked, and Aegon walks into Westeros and is like, you know what? This is all gonna be mine now, because I have Harrier jets.
As anyone with like at the age of 27 would do, really. 100%. I mean, we're seeing it in the streets today.
Really, if you think about what Aegon's Conquest is, it's just a character piece on how hilariously easy it would be to win a medieval war if you just had like 3 Harrier jets.
Yeah, I think this is really just George R. R. Martin's self-insert character.
Who is he? You're saying George is Aegon? He pictures himself as Aegon?
Yeah. I mean, if I was writing this, I would too. Come on, 27. You're going to be all like, I could just conquer a whole continent with these giant lizard things, which are fake, by the way.
There is 100% possibility that on George R. R. Martin's laptop right now, there is a copy of Fire and Blood with every one of Aegon's names shopped in with George's name, and he thinks about being Aegon the Conqueror.
Damn. I would love that copy. Well, Calvin, you could actually just make that. You have the books to just replace Echo with George R. R. Martin.
Just typing out the whole book and then just replacing Echo with George Martin. That would take so fucking long.
So you got Black Sabbath playing in the background with Aegon's dragons. It's pretty cool. And he's like, hey, you know what? On Dragonstone, everybody, let's just throw out a bunch of ravens towards everybody. See what happens.
Because you'd have to think, if dragons are like a new thing in Westeros, because that's what this story is set up as. Like, it's pretty obvious that the Western Lords don't conceptualize what a dragon is, because they all go to war, and then after like 2 battles, like maybe 3, everyone's kind of like, huh. Man, wow, these are really good. These are like really, really good.
Yeah, good example of that is the guy at Harrenhal.
Yeah, Black Harren.
Yeah, Black Harren. He's just like, hey, Aegon, you're not going to blow up my castle. And Aegon's just like, watch this. Literally goes up into the fucking sky to where he's like a dot on the moon. And uses Balerion's fire to just absolutely annihilate everyone. In that chapter, I really do love the scenery, how the fire is so hot, the stone is melting.
Oh, yeah.
And the towers are looking like candles in the night with black and red fire. So edgy, so cool. Like, George gets it.
It almost evicts like imagery of like, those like the nuclear bomb tests, just like this raw destructive power that's just like almost unreal. It is unreal, right? Because it's just kind of crazy. And the way he frames that, especially with Black Harren being so defiant initially, he doesn't think for a goddamn second that does it say in the book whether he sees the dragon?
I think so. I'm not 100% sure. So the way I at least think about it, at least what's coming back to me. So Black Harren was like, yo, fuck you, Aegon.
That was a direct quote. Because Aegon he said, hey, yo, fuck you.
So,
homies hate Aegon.
Because Aegon sent out all those ravens to, like, bow to me and keep all your lands and titles and all this stuff, or, face me and be humble.
Yeah. So
he goes to Black Harren personally, and he's like, well, what's your answer, bro? And then Harren's like, no, this is my land. And, he just kind of fucks himself and his whole family line. It's a direct quote from the book.
Needless to say, Black Harren did pay the troll toll pretty heavily.
Really? He really did.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, especially as we no spoilers here, but as we do get later into the book, it really is kind of convincing to think of Harrenhal as cursed with all the crazy stuff that happens there.
Yeah.
But so Aegon defeats Black Harren pretty handily. I mean, Aegon only has like 3,000 guys, and Harrenhal is like the most. See, to me it was crazy, and this is why I say that the Western Lords must not have known what dragons are, because
there might have been, like, hearsay, but
Harrenhal at this point is the biggest castle in Westeros by, like, a very large margin. It was built to literally be indestructible, essentially. Mm-hmm. And then immediately Aegon just annihilates it, and it takes another battle with Argilac the Arrogant And people still don't know. They still, after he beats what I mean, I guess is the precursor to the Baratheon bloodline, right? The Duradon.
Yeah. So Duradon dies, and then Oros Baratheon, he takes over, and he fucks the Duradon's wife.
Nice. It is. Does he really? I don't remember. Are you guessing?
Yeah. No, he does do it. So in the book, it's described as, so after, you know, Argilac the Storm King just absolutely eats shit.
Gets stormed upon, as it were.
Yeah. His wife, I think it's his wife basically, is like, I'm queen of the Stormlands now. Fuck everybody. You're not getting this land here. And the garrison there, that was literally like, dude, they have fucking dragons, and we just saw what the fuck happened. I'm not getting cooked alive for that. Literally stripped her down, gagged her, and tied her up, and threw her to, like, the enemy camp, basically, as, like, it's all yours.
Kinky.
And Oros Baratheon puts his cloak around her and says, like,
right.
You know, yeah. And then they, you know, have their relationship.
Yeah, that's wild.
And then he gets fucking dunked on in Dorne, dude. He gets fucked up.
We didn't even get to his hand yet. You're getting too far ahead of yourself. He does get fucking nasty blasted in Dorne, doesn't he? Argilac the Arrogant gets fucked up, which, by the way, the Stormlands, I didn't understand, because they never really show the Stormlands much in the show, in the original Game of Thrones. I feel like you don't really see it until House of the Dragon, but, like, obviously with a name like the Stormlands, you'd think it'd be rainy, but just the fact that they essentially live in, like, a perpetual state of rain is, like, pretty cool. And I also really like just like the idea of like dragons fighting in like heavy rain. I don't know, something about that aesthetic is very cool. They even talk about it, how like the dragons couldn't fly because the rain was so heavy. I don't know, that's just a cool dynamic, like thinking about the way that interacts. Then the Field of Fire happens, and you have never had two more cocky sons of bitches. They felt so good about themselves.
They really thought they could pull up.
They really did pick the absolute worst terrain to fight a dragon in. Like, if you were trying to pick a place to lose at, like, a giant wheat field is, like, the #1 place to go. Aegon just absolutely dunks these people because he just lights them all on fire and they surrender, like, immediately.
As you should.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes everything is on fire and it's just getting melted. Of course. Mm-hmm. And then you have this really interesting dynamic with the Starks. Because one of the things that you'll see is that, like, a lot of the times, like, there's certain traits that, like, members of houses in the show tend to have. So the Starks at the time, they decide not to fight Aegon, right? And Torrhen, who I think it's Torrhen Stark, whatever the ruling Stark's name at the time.
I think you're right, it is Torrhen.
He's known afterwards as, I think it's the King Who Knelt or something like that. But one thing that George says is that, you know, no Winterfell men died on the Field of Fire or any battle with Aegon. And I think that really speaks to, like, the Stark's character as a whole in terms of, like, a house, because they have to deal with winter, right? So there's they're very close and intimately familiar with the reality that there is this omnipresent force of nature that you cannot fight. And they are the one house who surrenders because dragons are as to winter is to them. It's this big looming force that's impossible to directly fight. So you just have to make do with it. And I just thought that was really interesting that they were the only house that did that, and I think it just speaks to the character of the Starks as a whole. They're these hard, honor-bound warrior people, but they're also very pragmatic within that.
Man, you must have been fun to hang out with in English class.
Dude, I killed it in English class. English class was like my favorite, dude. I crushed English class. I was scoring, I'm making a lot of basketball references. I was fucking 3-pointers in English class. I don't even watch basketball.
Dude, you're slam dunking these fucking
I don't even know. I watched one dunk compilation. I don't even play basketball. I was crushing it in English class while people were playing basketball.
To be honest, I never even thought of it that way. That's really great insight into, you know, the overall threat of the dragons to the Starks.
Honestly, part of it is like, because the thing is, initially when I was doing these recordings, I would read the chapters 3 times essentially, because I would read it once and then I would record it and then I would edit it. So I basically got 3 different exposures to the chapters, and then a lot of times I would end up listening to the videos afterwards. I consumed the content of the first chapter of Fire and Blood probably more than any other book I've read. And me got time to think of all the stupid writer shit.
Yeah, by George. I'm a writer, Martin.
But that kind of wraps up like the first chapter, I think, right? I mean, what else?
It's pretty much just him establishing his foothold in Westeros. So he sends out, like, you know, his sister wives to... One of them goes to Dorne, and then one of them goes to the Aaron.
Oh, yes. Yes.
The Eyrie.
Maria, well, the Eyrie is she's actually very successful. They don't even fight either. They just understand.
They just see the dragon as she.
Yeah, they just literally, the line in the book is both the queens just smiled at each other, and you know the one who saw the dragon was just like, "Yep, that's a dragon, all right. Okay, yep, okay, you guys are in charge. Got it. Cool. Yep." Just which is like 100% the correct move, but it's just funny.
Oh, yeah.
And then Maria Martell. This is the juicy. I think it's Maria Martell, Queen of Dorne, the Yellow Toad. Ooh, this character is a weird one. Blind.
She's described as a very hot, very sexy Spanish woman. It's the average Spanish woman.
What if instead of the way she was described, she was just like an IG baddie? Just
thick lips, thick ass,
Latina,
25-year-old Latina.
Mamma mia, cabron. No, she's like a fucking like wrinkled zombie. She's this fucking blind, deaf. But I mean, this is a badass line she gives. Unbowed, unbent, unbroken. Just fucking fuck you. There's a big middle finger. Which is so like I'm an old ruler and I'm about to die. Fuck you. You know, like I don't give a shit. You can eat it. And yeah, that's kind of that's really what sets up basically the next two chapters is the conflict with Dorne.
Conflict with Dorne and the establishment of King's Landing, but we'll get there. Stay tuned.
I think the whole conflict with Dorne kind of takes the center point because I believe a lot of 100%. That, like, the Dornish have this really interesting thing where they're basically using like guerrilla Vietnam tactics against the dragon, which makes sense because that's the only way that you can beat
and
something
scorched
like
earth tactics too. They're poisoning the water and like all that shit.
Damn. Which, by the way, if anybody, this is just a weird other plug. We're plugging other shows that don't even. There's this podcast I listen to called what War and Conquest, and basically the way he describes the Dornish fighting is kind of what like Vlad the Impaler did when people were invading him. You want to beat the other person so bad that you don't even care if you like destroy your land and kill everybody in the process. They're really crazy, but it says a lot about, I think, Dorne's character without having to say a lot. The fact that they choose to fight this war and in the way that they do it, I think you can kind of read into a lot of like Dorne as a society.
You'd say they live in a society.
They live in a society. I don't know. It's cool.
It is cool.
It sets them aside. They fight this big, crazy superpower, and they fucking get. They get his bitch, dude.
They get what?
One of them. One of them. It was one of his.
Fucking. I know I think that's her name.
It's either Rhaenys or Visenya. It's one of them.
Visenya lives. I know it's that.
It's Rhaenys. Yeah.
Visenya fucking lives. Yeah. So Rhaenys.
So basically, after Maria Martell gives Aegon's sister wife, LOL, gives her Rhaena. Flips her a big old bird. Rhaena essentially comes and she says she's gonna be back with Fire and Blood. Oh my god, he said the title, Fire and Blood. George said she got her to say the title.
You know, that was the in-universe author of Fire and Blood stroking himself off.
George was all like, yeah, the Marvel movies are pretty cool.
Not just George, but the like in-universe author of this book.
100%. Grandmaster Maester Gildian, I think.
Yeah.
By the way, that's also the voice that I do, House of the Dragon. That shit, that's apparently Grandmaster Gildian the whole time. I didn't even think that was a character, but it is.
Yeah.
Somebody pointed that out to me in the comments, whoever you are, thank you, because
Damn.
In the first page of the book, there's like this picture of an old man, but like right next to it's saying, there's text saying it's Grandmaster Gildian, but it's written in like this super old English cursive style font, and it's really hard to read. I didn't pay attention to it, and then I flipped back to the front, and I was like, oh, that's who I am. So Rhaena comes back to bring Fire and Blood to Dorne.
Rhaenys gets got by a scorpion.
I was a little salty at this death. When Rhaena's dragon gets hit with the scorpion bolt and dies. I get it. It just feels kind of cheap. Like, I get that's how it would have to happen. I don't know.
Yeah.
It kind of comes out of nowhere, you know?
No, I agree. The way that she dies is kind of like anticlimactic in a way. But I do like the ending of how do you think she died? Was she tortured to death? Was she crushed?
What do you think happened to her?
Realistically, probably crushed to death or fell to her death. But knowing George is probably like, yeah, she survived and got tortured to death. Like, flayed alive.
I think if she did...
In slow-mo from Dread.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah. Have you heard of Theon Greyjoy? I don't know. I think that, yeah, probably she got crushed, and, you know, if she didn't die immediately, I don't think she could have lived particularly long. But, I mean, maybe... It's hard to say, because she's already going to be so messed up. I guess, I mean, it really is just left up to conjecture, right? You can only guess. My money's probably on the fact that she died. I mean, it's a rarity if you survive that.
Yeah, because you're landing on cinder block, sand, just heavy fucking objects, and the earth.
A dragon.
Yeah, a dragon. Not to mention the earth, the, like, hardest substance on earth.
So then, to put it lightly... Aegon's pissed, like real pissed, and essentially he flicks on Fortunate Sons on his playlist. He's got Black Sabbath going right, and he flies and just glasses, essentially, for you Halo fans. He just annihilates all of Dorne, just nuking cities like left and right, just like trying to wipe them off the continent. Just every town.
Yeah, it's a whole 2 years.
I'll show you Scorched Earth. Can you imagine? You're so mad. 2 straight years, all you do is go in napalm cities because they killed your wife. That's bad. He's upset.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, fuck. Like, you can't even really blame him. They killed his wife.
It's even described that Valyrian's fire is so hot that it turns the sand to glass, like you mentioned. So before or after this, that was when Oros Baratheon and like a couple of his other generals got captured, correct?
It was during, I think, before she got Oris and a couple of generals got taken hostage by the Dornish.
Yeah, and didn't they want to ransom them, correct?
They wanted to ransom them, and I believe that they did take the ransom, but they cut off the sword hand of all the commanding generals so that they couldn't pick up arms against Dorne again. I think it's funny how Oris rejects being the king's hand because the hand should have a hand.
Because he has no hand. Yeah.
Oris seems chill. I think this is really where the book says, like, things just kind of go less from a war and more to just a series of atrocities being committed on each other. It's any sense of civility has gone out the window, and it's no holds barred gruesome conflict at this point.
Yeah. I have in my notes here that, like, Aegon specifically was attacked 3 separate times by Dornish assassins in his own city. So just imagine if you're strolling through your own city and Dornish assassin was like, yeah, it's gonna get fucked.
Can we also just say how good George is with the whole strong female character thing? There's never a time where you see a strong female character in George's work and it feels forced. If you are looking to write bad bitch characters, look at George's work. Visenya is like hardcore as fuck because after all these assassination attempts on Aegon, she's like, listen, you gotta stay on your toes. You gotta learn how to fight more. You gotta keep training. And he's like, why? I have my Kingsguard. And then she cuts his face. She just slashes him across the face. And she's like, I could have killed you right there and they wouldn't have been able to do anything. You need to be ready. And he's kind of just like, damn, okay. Bad bitch. Like, strong female character, cool shit. I just liked that.
And with that, we lost half our audience. Thanks, Colin.
What? You don't like they like strong female characters?
No, I'm just saying because, we spoiled this chapter for him.
Crap, what are you talking about? We're talking about the chapters. This is kind of, this whole show, I think, is kind of predicated.
That's the point. That's the joke.
Spoiler, if it's a little late, spoiler alert, we're talking about the book.
So, can we talk about the biggest point in chapter 2?
What?
The fucking letter.
Ooh, yeah. The letter's good.
What the fuck was on that shit to make Aegon clench his fist and just fly off?
It's the Krabby Patty secret formula is what he read. The series of atrocities is happening, and it's just going on, and Maria Martell finally just gets old bitch disease and dies. And so when she dies, she's so old that the person who takes over for her is already really, really old. And he just doesn't want to fight anymore. The war has gone on too long. So he sends this letter to Aegon. And Aegon unwraps the letter. And he reads it in the middle of court and he doesn't say anything. He just looks at the letter. And speechlessly, blood just starts coming from his hand. No one knows what's on the letter besides Aegon, but they met and the conflict afterwards ceased. They say some people said there was a spell, there was malign magic put on it to make him end the war. Some people say that it was, or there's more believable stuff that it was just a heartfelt letter from one guy to another.
Maybe.
One of the reasons I also like Game of Thrones is because the way magic intertwines with the show is very well done. Because Lord of the Rings, it's pretty heavy-handed with the magic, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, but the way that magic is kind of this thing that it's like, yeah, it kind of exists maybe sometimes, gives it more of like an air of realism, and it kind of grounds it, and makes it at least feel more realistic.
It's more impactful every time it does happen.
Yes, it's kind of mysterious, it's not clearly outlined and defined, you don't get to see it in the open a lot, and especially in the history-style textbook that is Fire and Blood, it's very much so this is what X person thinks about, but then also other people say that he's a crackpot. I like how there is this vagueness to it. And we really see that exemplified with the letter as they kind of ask that question, like, was it magic? Like, who knows?
Yeah.
But regardless of what caused it, this is what brings the Dornish war to an end. It really kind of ends the hostilities, which is kind of crazy to think that Dorne got to still be an independent nation after all of this.
Shit, man. That's what makes you think, what's on that fucking letter? I don't know. I personally think it might have a connection to Aegon's Dream, a song of ice and fire. Maybe. I don't know.
All right, let's be real, though. That shit's only in the TV show, and I don't know about all
really?
that.
Oh, yeah, it is. It is, yeah, you're right.
So far, I've only read like a bit of the first book, but in all of Fire and Blood, there's no mention of Aegon's Dream.
Yeah.
And dude, that's going to be fun when we get to the actual chapters where the show happens, because then we can compare and contrast. That's going to be a lot of fun.
That's going to be good.
Oh, maybe it does have some connection with Aegon's Dream. Who knows? That'd be a cool tie-in, actually.
That's what I think, is like, hey, like, come to Dorne, we got something to show you. Or maybe it's magic, and then on top of that, the message of that.
But that's kind of what ends the conflict there, and then Aegon kind of gets to building and uniting this kingdom that he spent all this time going to war for afterwards.
In the book, it specifically said he tried to push a one people message. No more of this, like, warring between each other. We all need to serve the one king. And I think this is the chapter where he gets finally coronated as king of Westeros.
Yeah, I think officially. And it's, the book does an interesting thing here as well, because it goes back and it talks about Rhaena when she was still alive. And it's a little bit confusing, right? Because it's only like the third chapter, so you're not like super well initiated with the formatting of the book as being a history tome. So like the fact that it kind of jumps around in the timeline a little bit is a bit abrasive. It does give it a little bit of like a, well, wait, didn't this person die kind of feel? And even somebody in the comments asked me, hey, didn't like this person die? And they did. Rhaena did die in the last chapter, but it's kind of confusing because the time jumps. But we get to learn a little bit about the queens. Visenya, just kind of furthering her role as a bad bitch. She was very militaristic and hardcore, whereas Rhaena was prettier, the book says, and she was very heavily invested in the arts, which actually played quite a bit in their favor because she supported so many mummers, which by the way means actors. I had to look that up. She supported these people so much that they started spreading the word about how Aegon was a pretty good guy, and they make all these, he turns into a hero king because Rhaena is so closely attached and supportive of all these creatives, so it's kind of cool how they almost get the media behind them, right? They appeal to the creatives and they spread the good word. Aegon does something really interesting too, where he basically has a royal progress that just never ends.
Yeah. Said to have taken 6 maesters with him on his travels just to learn about Westeros and what the people need, their traditions, and all that stuff.
It's kind of crazy that if you think of it, with the exception of the big civil wars that happen, Aegon kind of uniting the 7 kingdoms is, in some ways, a lot of a positive.
Yeah.
And there's always that argument about being under the yoke of empire in the long run for a lot of societies is good, which is kind of weird, and we can get into that topic as well, right? Because, okay, you pay this initial heavy toll of insane human suffering and sacrifice. That is the war. But then once you become a part of this greater nation and become integrated, a lot of the times you see less infighting. There's enforced laws and rules. There's all these sort of problems that get remedied by the fact that you're part of a larger government. And it's just kind of an interesting thought experiment to think that, like, well, yeah, obviously war is like this horrific. And by the way, the whole book, as the book goes on, the anti-war sentiment really gets kind of driven home, and that's a theme that we'll be touching on for that. So all you Warhawks out there, buckle up.
The drama.
It's hardcore House of the Dragons. We're gonna do the whole book for this. Watch us get 0 views. I'm still down to talk about Game of Thrones with Carter. It's fun.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck. Yeah, it's fun. We had like a 3-hour conversation about just the ending of Game of Thrones.
Oh, so good. Which, by the way, I'll bet you this channel would love. Let us know down in the comments if you want to hear me and Carter hash it out for like 4 hours about the last couple seasons of Game of Thrones. Because boy, do we have a lot to say about it.
We have strong opinions.
Well, and not necessarily all bad, but there's just a lot to say. That's a big ask talking about that last season. We'll get into that. Let's keep on the rails for today. But yeah, definitely let us know if you guys would be interested in hearing something like that.
Yes, please. And please let us know if this is something more that you're interested in too.
Yeah, right. Yeah, definitely. And any other fun suggestions for stuff like this. This is pretty fun to make. Mm-hmm. So like if we look at what was happening to the kingdom afterwards. Aegon's smart though too, right? He doesn't go in and change everything immediately. Like once he rules, he actually gets to know the people, he gets to know the inhabitants. There's this very strong feeling that Aegon actually wants to be the best ruler he can be, it seems. It's his kingdom and he wants to take care of it is really what it seems like. It's quite the turn from, going to just like nuking people, but that seems to be kind of the direction he's trying to take it, and his efforts to understand the customs that are currently in place. There's stuff that he leaves, like the right of the first night, which is kind of weird and gross rule.
Yeah, that I was about to bring that up. How kind of fucked up that is, that like just any peasant's wedding day, the lord of the area could just fuck your wife.
By the way, it was weird, right? Because you read the lord's right to the first night, and like they don't tell you what that rule actually is until later in the book, but you just hear it and you're like, I don't like the way that sounds. Yeah. That sounds a little sketchy.
It does not give a good vibe.
You hear what it is and you're like, yep, that's about basically the worst thing I thought it was, but exactly what I thought it was. Yeah. So he leaves that later in the book. It is kind of like an antiquated rule, but it's just going to show some of those things that he probably didn't necessarily agree with. He let kind of stay. Just he doesn't want to come in, upturn everything so dramatically that people are going to start rebelling immediately against him, right? And that's kind of a theme we see throughout the rest of the book is the realities of, even though you're a king who like theoretically has absolute power, how you still kind of have to manage stuff. You can't just with reckless abandon do all these things. There's definitely still like popular opinion to be held in mind.
Yeah, he's got to min-max Westeros.
Basically, Aegon's min-maxing Westeros. In the Total War campaign, that is. Damn, Total War Game of Thrones? Come on, Creative Assembly, let's get it!
That would be pretty good. I was actually thinking for the podcast, maybe just throw up like Total War gameplay if people just, need something to look at, I guess.
Damn, that might not even be a bad idea. Just Total War gameplay. That gives off the vibe that like this is pirated audio from another channel, though.
Oh, yeah. Never mind.
I don't know. I'll probably...
Pirated channels, you guys can do that.
I think I'll probably... I don't know. As far as the visuals, if anybody has good ideas for visuals, let us know. But I was probably going to just throw up maybe some of the artwork from like the scenes that we were talking about, pictures of the characters, stuff like that. Have it be like a little interactive. So that way the people watching at least have some kind of changing footage.
Can the first thumbnail of this just be Grand Maester... What's his name? Golitis?
Gildian?
Gildian. Yeah, can it just be Grand Maester Gildian?
That'd be really funny.
Can you just like zoom in on like a very small portion of the image and have it slowly zoom out to the end of the video?
If mushroom is to be believed. And all the Gildian quotes.
Oh man, cannot wait for that chapter. Those chapters,
there
bro.
are some choice Grand Maester Gildian quotes. And the great thing is, once you're looking at this book from the perspective that it's actually an old ass maester sitting in a room with like a candlelight, just like writing this out with a fucking quill, and he's making these cheeky fucking comments, adds so much depth to the comedy, because he's just fucking with this smug ass maester grin, like just a little curl up of the mouth. He's just writing,
if mushroom is to be believed, mayhaps
nether lips.
Oh man,
it's so good. By the way, okay, I'm just gonna say it. I know that we still have more to talk about. There's one thing that I've noticed. George R.R. Martin has a word of the day calendar.
Oh yeah, yes, he does.
100%. Pay attention to this. If you're ever re-listening to any of the chapters or rereading the book, what you'll see is that there will be like a 2-chapter section where there'll be a word that is very obscure that he has not used in the book up to that point, and then after that he'll use it like 4 or 5 times in like 1 or 2 chapters, and then after that he does not use it again for the rest of the book. And I'm just like, okay, yeah, words.com fucking
yeah.
And it makes perfect sense because he's a writer, but it's just kind of funny. I realized, I was like, hey, you got the calendar. George
It really is. It really is like some funny ass shit once you start to realize it.
Just the meta of George writing. Grand Maester Gildian is George R.R. Martin, though.
Oh yeah, that's a self-insert for sure. Forget Aegon being a self-insert.
It's not even a self-insert. It's the author of the fucking book, and George is the author of the fucking book. Like,
it's the most meta self-insert you can get.
That is, if mushroom is to be believed.
All right, have a good night, everybody.
Thanks for watching. I mean, is there that much else?
We must now turn our direction towards King's Landing. So King's Landing is actually getting fucking built, right?
Yeah, I guess we do still have to talk about King's Landing. And now we turn our attention to King's Landing.
Can you say it like Lord Corlys, please?
And now we turn our attention to King's Landing.
Thank you, Lord Corlys. Fucking shut the door.
Falls down the stairs. That's all we have left to cover, right? Is King's Landing?
King's Landing, and there's one like case that Visenya took over that I'd like to talk about.
Sure.
Okay, so King's Landing, love the fact that it's basically just like, oh shit, the king's over there? Let's all move over there. So there wasn't any actual planning to King's Landing. It just grew because people went there to like start their lives.
And you see that later in the book, King's Landing kind of turns out like a shithole for a really long time.
Yeah.
They go through economic difficulties, and it's this town that's like a shanty town that was built, and they don't have the money to fix it.
But yeah, that's all I really had to say about King's Landing, is that now it's like actually being established as like a city, a place to be.
It's cool how it was like a natural, like it wasn't a planned city, it just kind of happened.
Yeah.
I like that dynamic.
I do too. It's a nice, neat little detail, especially when you see it in like, you know, the show like Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, or, you know, fan art and stuff like that. It kind of adds that little nice little depth of like having that lived in feel.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's how King's Landing got its start.
100%.
So I wanted to talk about the case that Visenya took over, because I think she was Queen Regent while Aegon was like going out learning about Westeros.
Oh, yeah. The Rule of 7.
Yeah. So do you want to take the lead on this, or?
So the Rule of 7 is this rule that came from... So because Aegon is on this royal progress that essentially never ends, basically the queens take over governing King's Landing and, you know, more local affairs while Aegon's on his progress. So one day, a court case is brought up essentially where a man had beat his wife to death with a stick for being adulterous. And it's, you know, it goes back and forth because it is technically legal to beat your wife if she cheats on you in Westeros. You can do that. And he shows her the stick that he beat her with, and he says it's like lawful, XYZ. And then the people who are the wife's brothers argue that he hit her basically like 100 times, and the guy who did it doesn't even really try and defend himself on that point. He just says nothing. So Visenya thinks about it, and she basically says that because she cheated on you, you were right to reprimand her. The 7 made women to be faithful to their husbands, but the first 6 blows were legal because there are 7 gods, and the 7th god is the stranger, and he's the god of death. So because you beat her more times than 6, you are therefore basically killing her, and that's how you can only do it 6 times. So that's kind of how the rule of 6 gets established in Westeros, and we don't really get a good idea of kind of what that implies for other rulings. It's really only given for this, and I mean, it's kind of just some some weird shit around the number 6, I guess, was probably why it's not brought up again. But it is kind of interesting. It does a good job of fleshing out how Westeros is religious. And that's another interesting point about how Aegon himself is not a pious man, but because Aegon's just really good at being a leader, he does a very good job of courting the sympathies and the alliances with the church. He does a very good job of keeping them on his side, and this is kind of a good example of Visenya has essentially created a law around one of the church's principles, right? So it goes to it's kind of showing how intertwined the faith and the government are in this universe.
Yeah. And then they just beat the shit out of him.
Yeah, then they just fuck that guy up. So he hit that girl 100 times, so they hit him 100 times and just fuck him up with a stick.
Yeah.
The rule of 6 is if you fuck up, you get hit with a stick a lot.
I prefer castrated by sword than hit by stick 100 times.
Oh, we'll get to that. Yeah, a lot of that happens. This Game of Thrones we're talking about.
Well, I think that about wraps it up for whole Aegon's Rule.
I think that about wraps up. That's most of Aegon's Rule, right? And so next episode, we are going to be talking about... Ooh, this next one's going to be just such a juicy one.
Juicy.
Maegor and Aenys. Maegor and Aenys. What, bro, his name is spelled Aeyns. How the fuck am I supposed to know it's Aenys? How do you pronounce Aeyns as anything other than anus?
No, I would have done the same thing, but it's just so funny that someone in the comments is like, actually.
Fucking King Anus, God. But
don't mean to make fun of you guy in the comments, but it's just funny.
It's the internet. He can take it.
Yeah.
No one's ever gotten upset over something somebody said on the internet.
Never ever.
Anyways. So yeah, that's gonna be a fucking really good episode, right? Because Maegor the Cruel. Actually, I didn't realize. We'll save this really getting into this topic for next episode, but there's actually some division on whether Maegor the Cruel was a good or bad king. When I ran the poll, I was actually really surprised, but that's something we'll kind of go and cover a little bit more in the next episode. But yeah, this is these couple of chapters really serve as a good way to do what the book is setting out to do, right? We're really kind of getting an establishment of the universe. We're getting an understanding of a lot of how the houses function, and also how Westeros was kind of founded. And you get a lot of, because that's the thing about the main Game of Thrones series, is you just kind of thrust into this universe, and a lot of the things that you learn about it, you just kind of have to put together by watching like the characters talk and interact about stuff. It's not like hand-holdy or like spelled out for you. You just kind of piece things together as you go by watching it. And Game of Thrones can afford to do that because it takes its time with its episodes. I mean, 8 freaking seasons of like an hour plus long episodes.
Yeah.
By the way, when I got done watching the original Game of Thrones show, I felt like, when I went to watching like other movie and TVs, everything felt so rushed comparatively. Because Game of Thrones takes its time doing stuff.
Yeah, it does. But man, does it pay off.
It does pay off, but like I watched other TV and it was like really quick. And so I was like, slow down, guys. I'm here for the ride.
Stay tuned for our Sopranos podcast when I finally sit Calvin down and watch more Sopranos.
That'd be really funny if we just get through like all the Game of Thrones content and then we're all just like, all right, other TV shows now.
I mean, I'd be down.
That'd be fun.
I love that shit.
I just want to take a moment to thank everybody, because I know like I do the little like couple seconds where I get to talk to people at the end of each chapter and I kind of give my opinion piece, but those always feel rather brief. But I did really want to take this opportunity now that, because obviously if you've watched through this entire podcast, right, you're gonna be probably one of the people who's more in on the channel, but I really appreciate all of you guys supporting, watching the content. I mean, it means a lot to me. There's not like the channel's not like super successful, right? We don't even have like 1,000 subs yet, but I mean, still, that just the fact that this has gotten any traction at all, you know, and that you guys keep coming back to watch the videos and there's any interest, I do really appreciate it. It's super cool that you guys like the content and actually enjoy. Cool to know that I'm making something that the people actually appreciate, and hopefully you guys appreciate this as well, because I had a really good time talking shit with my buddy Carter about Game of Thrones. Because like the way this podcast came about is because me and Carter lived together, and every time he started watching the videos because we watched House of the Dragon together, so he started listening to the books. So we would just get into these super deep discussions about the show, and then we would also talk about the books because he was now listening to the chapters. It just kind of, we were like, God, we need to record this because we had some meaty conversations about it. It's good stuff.
Yeah, and now we get to record it, give it to you guys, and again, hopefully you like this. Let us know if you want more. Give us tips on how to improve it. Maybe.
Yeah. That's the other thing. Give us like a like legit criticisms, right? Like, I don't know, what audio or whatever, or maybe just like other cool things you'd like to see us do as far as like with the Game of Thrones content, or things you'd like us to talk about. In the future episodes, we're just gonna go through this like chapter by chapter. We kind of pushed the first 3, all of Aegon's Conquests together, and we might end up doing that for other shorter chapters, but for the most part, we'll either be like kind of chunking into like certain storylines or going chapter by chapter. Obviously for like the Dance of the Dragons, we'll probably end up doing that chapter by chapter because
that's going to be a lot.
So much happens in those chapters, right? Like there's so much content.
I cannot wait. I cannot fucking
Bro,
wait.
There's some chapters where I could theoretically see us having a podcast that's longer than the actual recorded chapter because there's just so much to break down.
Yeah,
there's a lot of content to go over, but I'm really excited for it, right? Because we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves. We have all of Maegor and Ennis's rule, and then we have the whole of the Jaehaerys Alysanne plotline.
Oh my god, dude! Jaehaerys is going to be chunky.
Oh, there's so many good chapters.
And there's a lot of good stuff there, guys. Wow. Please continue to listen.
Oh, wow, I'm super excited.
And if you just listen to the podcast first before listening to the book, listen to the book first. You're going to get a lot more out of this if you listen to the book first.
Wouldn't that be funny if this is like the first video somebody's watched of the channel? Go to the channel page. By the time this comes out, I've recorded almost 100% of the Fire and Blood book as an audiobook form. Go listen to the chapters if you haven't already read the book or already listened to them somewhere else. I would go listen to them anyways. Why not? You know?
Yeah, I mean, you can get ahead of us. We'll still be here.
Can I also say, too, one of the things that I find really interesting about the people, a lot of the people who have watched my videos said that they had already heard the audiobook, but they preferred my recording over the one that they got somewhere else. And I just thought that was really cool that, like, people enjoy the content. And that's the other thing too, and I can say this speaking directly as somebody who has recorded almost a 700 plus page audiobook at this point. A lot of the way the story is presented really is up to you, because if you read a sentence, right, there's a couple of different ways that you can kind of interpret that sentence. And if you change your inflection, it can actually mean different things, or at the very least imply different things. So like a lot of how the story is framed to you is actually by the person reading it, right? Like I've had audiobooks where I prefer listening to them because the voice actor does such a good job bringing the characters to life and framing the setting. I believe it was a Warhammer book I was listening to, but he did such a good job that I was like, I prefer this. I like reading, you know, but he just knocked it out of the park. I was like, I really prefer listening to this just because he does such a good job. And I definitely think that's something that I improve on over time. The first couple of chapters were a little bit shaky, but I think now that I've kind of like gotten a bit into more of like the character work and I'm a bit more used to that, definitely feel like because I'm a more seasoned voice actor, I can really kind of direct the experience a lot more. So that's if you have already read or listened to the book, I mean, hey, give it a shot. You might like my recording as well, right? And then, you know, we can kind of, and then you can laugh when I do all of the voices that the characters do. Wouldn't it be funny if I just recorded? I'm going to record the intro to this as Mushroom. Welcome to Talking Dragons. God damn, I want Mushroom to be in season 2 of House of the Dragon so bad, dude.
What if it's just Peter Dinklage again?
That would fucking rule. If they got Peter Dinklage to play Mushroom.
I'd love that shit, man.
I think that's about it, right?
Yeah.
Thanks, guys, for watching. Appreciate it. This was a lot of fun to record, and we'll be making more of them. So definitely stay tuned if you enjoyed it. Carter, you got anything to say? Yes. Fucking critical ass. Yeah. See ya. Okay. That's the video. See ya.
Yeah, I guess follow Dude Man Brucas on twitch.tv.
Oh, yeah.
I stream sometimes.
Dude Man Brucas.
Dude Man Brucas at twitch.tv.
I already forgot. I was like, man, bro, dude, cuz.
Wish me luck on my Dead Space Impossible run. I'm on chapter 4. Please.
Oh, the Impossible run.
Give me your strength. Yeah, so I mean, I guess we're already at the tail end of this, so fuck it. Yeah, Dead Space Impossible mode is Iron Man mode, so you can't die and it's on hard.
Ouch. So yeah, go subscribe to, if you want to see Carter swear violently at his computer as he dies.
I'm not doing the Impossible mode there, I'm doing it on my Xbox, but I do have Dead Space on my computer. So if you would like to see me do Impossible run on my computer, maybe we'll do Plasma Cutter only.
All right.
Let me know.
All the fun stuff. Definitely go look up Carter's channel. All right. Thanks, guys, for watching, and we'll see you later.